Hey guys, I wanted to make an update video to the Flamewood build that I did. There were a couple of questions that I didn't really answer in the video and I didn't show how the league mechanic works. So I'm gonna answer them in this video, and this is mostly gonna be me talking. I'm gonna show some clips, like for example league mechanics. The reason why I didn't include league mechanics in the first video, I completely forgot. Because I tried it at low levels, it felt bad and I never really tried it again. And I tried it now at lower ranks and it doesn't work well with this build. You can actually make this work with like a ballista's build, but this specific build will be very bad for the league mechanics. The reason is that you cannot really taunt enemies. You cannot taunt them, so sometimes the enemies are going to be capturing your totem. You're going to drop your totems to trigger Flamewood, but it's not going to trigger Flamewood because there's nothing hitting them. And the totem itself, the warchief totem damage hitting enemies, it's not doing enough damage to even break enemies channeling your totem. That's one reason why it feels bad. The other reason that I only have 2 totems. 2 totems are not enough to cover the zone, but if you play ballistas and you got like 10, 15, even 20 totems, you can pretty much scatter them across the arena. Some of them gonna get hit and it's gonna proc them and we're gonna do enough damage to, well, either kill enemies or distract them. With this build, it won't. So that's one question. The league mechanics are really bad with this. The second thing, I said that I have like 80 million damage. That's with 9 projectiles hitting. And the thing is, I think my build is like on the low side of the damage. People are gonna be getting like 300 million damage, even more. The damage I calculated was 4.5 million per projectile. So 9 projectiles per totem and 2 totems. So 18 projectiles in total. And you get over 80 million damage when 2 totems proc just once. And if you've been following my builds, I usually do like a budget builds. They are not the most optimized. I'm an explorer, not really an optimizer. I like figuring things out rather than optimizing like one build and fine-tuning it very much. So other players who spend more time doing one build and optimizing it more gonna squeeze out a lot more damage out of that build. So don't be surprised if you're gonna start seeing people getting like 300 million, 500 million damage with the totems, because that's totally possible. The Sire of Shards, by the way, the weapon is really good for this, but you can also do like annihilating light stuff, the triple elemental damage stuff. You would have to replace a couple gems. You can also use Cane of Kulamag, but it's not gonna be as good as Sire of Shards. I like things to be like simple with as few conditional things as possible. But you can always figure out like a way to get more damage, at least on paper, by adding like more conditional things. So yeah, Sire of Shard is a really good weapon, but you can actually get a lot more damage by using like annihilating light and getting maybe more flask effect to get more projectiles from the Dying Sun, for example. Another thing, Black Zenith gloves does work, and I wanted to show you that it does here. So right now the Flamewood is in the Sire of Shards, which give +4 projectiles, and as you can see, number of projectiles to fire 7. If I place it in the Black Zenith, which is also +4 projectiles, you're gonna see that it is also 7 projectiles, because Black Zenith also gives +4 additional projectiles. So it does work. It does make it have 5-second cooldown. Actually, you can even check it here. Cooldown is 5 seconds, but you can sort of bypass it. Each time a totem, a Flamewood triggers, you can actually even see the aura around it when it has the Flamewood. Once it triggers, it loses that flaming aura. Once we lose that, you can actually summon a fresh totem that hasn't triggered yet. So you can kind of bypass the cooldown by just spamming totems, but it's not really gonna work with the Val ancestral warchief, because you cannot just spam it. That's one of the reasons why I didn't try to get plus extra totems, because I couldn't get a fed Val ancestral warchief use anyway. So yeah, Black Zenith gloves do work, and it could actually be an interesting choice for that. It doesn't seem to affect the totem duration. It's not even a spell, so it's not affected. The totem itself is not affected, but Flamewood support is. Another thing that I actually forgot, when I posted the video, there was only one person who noticed that I did not have the Traitor keystone allocated. So essentially what that means is that you don't really need to be Pathfinder. You could pick up something else and still get flash generation through the Traitor keystone, or you could pick up Pathfinder and instead of the Traitor you could use something else. Maybe Timeless Jewel to get more like double damage, maybe Watcher Sire, something else. Another thing, clear speed. I think the clear speed feels kind of okay. I could have chosen better clips for the video. The way I'm playing is usually not trying to be the fastest possible, but I'm just playing at my own pace, reading the stream chat, interacting with people, opening the boxes, and interacting with like other mechanics. Legion, you cannot do Legion with this because Legion doesn't attack, so you cannot really trigger your Flamewood. So I pretty much showed that in the video, but I thought maybe that was confusing. I spec'd into Legion but didn't really want to respec anything, so I just kept it and I just skipped the Legion. But essentially the clear speed, at least to me, it feels fine. You basically just drop the totem and move on. You see the enemy pack, drop the totem, move on. The taunt is very important, or you could also place the totem in between you and the enemy. So we're gonna be shooting projectiles towards you and you place totem, block those projectiles and immediately trigger the Flamewood. And sometimes the trigger is pretty much instant. As soon as you place totem, it's already triggering, and you do need to get projectile speed. That's why I stacked the projectile speed tattoos, and I did get this one. It's very important to have projectile speed because faster moving enemies will pretty much just outrun your projectiles. I was actually very tempted to start the league with this Flamewood, but I wasn't sure how it's gonna work. I did in the past play a couple reflect totem builds. I even played the molten shell with the Bal molten shell, like pulling enemies in. I don't remember exactly what I did, but I did some crazy weird shenanigans, and those builds had much slower clear speed. So this build does not have slow clear speed because it's not as bad as those previous builds, because this one at least has good damage and pretty good coverage. So I was planning on starting with the Flamewood, but I didn't because I didn't really want to risk. I already got burned. I think it was last week when I started with Prismatic Burst, and it was one of my worst experiences, so I did not want to risk the unknown thing again. But I had people starting the league with the Flamewood Totem Ballistas, strength stacking, and it worked really well for them. So if you're thinking, could it work for league start? Yes, because you pretty much don't really need anything fancy. Side of Shards is farmable even in SSF. You get the Scion for the flash generation. Reign of Splinters, by the way, you can get the cheapest one possible. Reduced totem damage is pretty much meaningless. In fact, if I were to get the perfect Reign of Splinters in PvP, I only gain like 100 or 200,000 average damage per projectile, which is, what does it mean, extra 2 million on top of 80 million? That's pretty much nothing. So Reign of Splinters, just buy the cheapest one. Now the Replica Dragonfang's Flight did go up in price by quite a lot. When I bought it, it was like 50 gears, or 30 or 50 gears, and then suddenly it jumped to 5 divines and then stabilized at around 3 divines. But it's not mandatory. On a non-crit build, it's harder to get damage on an amulet because all you can do is get like spell damage. Cast speed doesn't matter here. And then what else is there? You could actually get strength, which would give you a bit of damage because of Iron Will. You could also try to get reduce or increase reservation efficiency for some aura and try to add something else, but this amulet is not mandatory. So yeah, if you cannot get this amulet, don't worry too much. You're still gonna have plenty of damage. You may end up with like 60 million, 50 million damage, but that's still more than enough, and over time you can just farm more currency and get it if you really like this. Now the tankiness of this build, like I said, is not very tanky, but it doesn't feel too bad because you can taunt like normal enemies during the mapping, and it's not too bad. Once you add determination, for example, skitterbots chill enemies, so it slows them down as well. It gives you more chance to react, and a bit of regen, because otherwise you have no regen anywhere and then it feels bad. You pretty much have to use life lashcon every time you take any hit, so get some regen. That pretty much covers all the smaller things that I haven't really answered in my previous video. The next build, I'm already doing a Soul Eater with the Echo Forge and doing Poison. So it's gonna be Poison, Soul Eater, Pathfinder with Viper Strike most likely. The build will be a bit weird and it's gonna be expensive because Flask duration tattoos are like 40 years each, so I'm gonna be doing a bit cheaper version, stacking fewer of them and still getting flask effect duration on the medium cluster jewels. So that is pretty much it for this video. Thank you for watching and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.